The River Narmada. The Narmada is a river in central India and is the fifth largest river in the Indian subcontinent. Narmada is a Sanskrit word meaning the giver of pleasure. It forms a traditional boundary between North and South India and flows westwards over a length of more than 1,000 kilometers before draining through the Gulf of Cambay into the Arabian Sea, which is 30 kilometers west of the Bharuch city of Gujarat. It is one of only three major rivers in peninsular India that runs from the east to the west along the Tapti River and the Mahi River. It is the largest west-flowing river. Also, it is the only river in India that flows in a rift valley flowing west between the Satpura and Vindhya ranges. Although the Tapti River and Mahi River also flow through rift valleys but between different ranges. It flows through the states of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and in Gujarat. The source of the Narmada is a small tank called Narmada Kund located on the Amarkantak hill in the Shahadol district of eastern Madhya Pradesh. The river descends from the Amarkantak hill range at the Kapildhara Falls over a cliff and meanders in the hills, flowing through a tortuous course, crossing the rocks and islands up to the ruined palace of Ramnagar. Between Ramnagar and Mandla, further southeast, the course is comparatively straight with deep waters devoid of any rocky obstacles. The Banjer River joins from the left. The river then runs northeast in a narrow loop towards Jabalpur, close to this city, after a fall of some 30 feet called the Dhuandhara, the fall of mist. It flows for 3 kilometers in a deep narrow channel through the magnesium limestone and basalt rocks called the marble rocks from a width of about 90 meters or 300 feet above. It is compressed in this channel for about 18 or 60 feet. Beyond this point, up to its meeting the Arabian Sea, the Narmada enters three narrow valleys between the Vindhya scarps in the south and the Satpura range in the south. The southern extension of the valley is wider at most places. These three valley sections are separated by the closely approaching line of the scarps and the Satpura hills. Emerging from the marble rocks, the river enters its first fertile basin, which extends to about 320 kilometers with an average width of 35 kilometers in the south. In the north, the valley is limited to the Barna-Bareilly plains terminating at Barkara hills opposite Hoshangabad. The banks are about 12 meters high. It is in the first valley of the Narmada that many of its important tributaries from the south join it and bring the waters of the northern slopes of the Satpura hills. Among them are the Sher, the Shakkar, the Dhudi, the Tawa and the Ganjal. Among them the Tawa is the biggest tributary. The Hiran, the Barna, the Choral, the Karam and the Lohar are the important tributaries joining from the north. Below Handia and Nemavar to Hiran Fall, the river is approached by hills from both sides. In this stretch, the character of the river is varied. The Omkareshwar Island, which is sacred to the Lord Shiva, is the most important river island in Madhya Pradesh. At first, the descent is rapid and the stream, quickening in pace, rushes over a barrier of rocks. The Sikta and the Kaveri join it below the Khandwa plain. At 2 points at Mandhar, about 40 kilometers below Nemavar and Dadrai, and 40 kilometers further down near Punasa, the river falls over a height of about 12 meters. A few kilometers further down near Bareilly and the crossing ghat of the Agra to Mumbai road, National Highway number 3, the Narmada enters the Mandaleshwar plain, the second basin about 180 kilometers long and 65 kilometers wide in the south. The northern strip of the basin is only 25 kilometers. The second valley section is broken only by Saheshwar Dhara Fall. The early course of about 125 kilometers up to Markari Falls is met with a succession of cataracts and rapids from the elevated tableland of Malwa to the low levels of the Gujarat plain. Towards the west of this basin, the hills draw very close but soon dwindle down. Below Makrai, the river flows between Vadodara district and the Narmada district and then meanders through the rich plains of Bharuch district of Gujarat state. The banks are high between the layers of old alluvial deposits, hardened mud, gravels of nodular limestone and sand. The width of the river spans from about 1.5 kilometers at Makarai to 3 kilometers near Bharuch and to an estuary of 21 kilometers at the Gulf of Khambat. An old channel of the river, 1 kilometers to 2 kilometers south from the present one, is very clear below Bharuch. The Karanjan and the Orsing are the most important tributaries in the original course. The former joins at Rund and the later at Vyas in the Vadodara district of Gujarat, opposite each other, and form a Triveni, that is the confluence of three rivers on the Narmada. The Amravati and the Bukhi are other tributaries of significance. Opposite the mouth of the Bukhi is a large drift called the Alia Bet or Kadaria Bet. The tidal rise is felt up to 32 kilometers above Bharuch, where the tides rise to about a meter and spring tides rise up to 3.5 meters. The river is navigable for vessels of the burden of 95 tons up to Bharuch and for vessels up to 35 tons up to Shamla Pita or Ghangdia. The small vessels of 10 tons voyage up to Tilakawada in Gujarat. There are sand bases and shoals at the mouth of Bharuch. The nearby island of Kabirwad in the Narmada river features a gigantic banyan tree which covers 10,000 square meters. The Narmada Basin. The Narmada Basin, hemmed between Vindhya and Satpura ranges, extend over an area of more than 98,000 square kilometers. The basin covers large areas in the states of Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and a comparatively smaller area in Maharashtra. In the river course of more than 1,000 kilometers, explained above, there are 41 tributaries, out of which 22 are from the Satpura range and the rest on the right bank are from the Vindhya range. The basin has 5 well-defined physiographic regions. They are the upper hilly areas covering the districts of Shahadol, Mandla, Durg, Balaghat and Sioni, the upper plains covering the districts of Jabalpur, Narsimhapur, Sagar, Damo, Chhindwara, Hoshangabad, Betul, Raisen and Sehor, the middle plains covering the districts of East Nimar, part of West Nimar, Devas, Indore and Dhar, the lower hilly areas covering part of the West Nimar, Jhabua, Dhulia, Narmada, parts of Vadodara, and lastly the lower plains covering mainly the districts of Narmada, Bharuch and parts of Vadodara. The hilly regions are well forested. The upper, middle and the lower plains are broad and fertile, well suited for cultivation. The Narmada basin mainly consists of black soils. The coastal plains in Gujarat are composed of alluvial clays with a layer of black soils on the surface. The valley experiences extremes of hydrometeorological and climatic conditions, with the upper catchment having an annual precipitation in the range of 1000 millimeters to 1850 millimeters, and with half or even less than half in its lower regions. The diversity of vegetation from lush green in the upper region to dry, deciduous teak forest vegetation in the lower region is testimony to this feature. The Irrigation Commission of 1972 identified the Narmada basin in Madhya Pradesh as drought affected and a large part of North Gujarat, Saurashtra and Kutch as semi-arid or arid scarcity regions on account of extreme unreliability of rainfall, rendering them chronically drought-prone and subject to serious drinking water problems.